Hey guys, tonight we're heading straight into the heart of the Mongolian steppe, where the wind howls like a chorus of irritated ghosts and the sky never ends. You're standing ankle deep in frozen mud beside a smoking pile of horse manure, blinking into the orange haze of sunrise. 100 yards off, a dog is barking at absolutely nothing with total commitment, and just ahead, a sea of round tents called gurs, but you'll probably still call them yurts because you forgot by the third sentence it's like a cluster of mushrooms in the grass. The people here don't wear watches, and yet everything runs exactly on time. Every pot gets scrubbed, every animal gets fed, every child gets assigned to a task you probably weren't allowed to do until high school. This is the land of the Golden Horde, the descendants of Genghis Khan, and while they may not be rampaging across Eurasia this very moment, they're still terrifyingly efficient at assigning chores. And yes, you're about to be part of it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is, because if you're hearing this while herding goats at 3:17 a.m., I have some questions. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge past a sour-faced goat that eyes you like you owe it money. The cold air pinches your cheeks, and somewhere in the distance a baby shrieks with the volume and clarity of an emergency siren. Welcome to the camp. You're new here and no one cares. The elders already placed a hand on your shoulder and pointed you toward a suspiciously well-worn pair of boots and a leather apron. Your fate for today is sealed. A teenage girl with a massive braid and zero patience hands you a carved wooden disc about the size of a dinner plate. There are symbols etched into it: goats, arrows, smoke, spirals, and one that might just be a disgruntled yak. She spins it on a stick in the ground and it clacks to a stop. The arrow points directly at the goat icon. She smirks. Congratulations, you're on goat milking duty. This is the infamous Mongol chore wheel. Every adult elder, and unfortunately every able-bodied newcomer, takes part. It's not just a whimsical game. It's a logistical marvel. In a camp that moves every few weeks, where hundreds of animals need tending and tents need folding, the wheel keeps things running smoothly. One spin, one fate. Mainstream historians have documented these rotating systems in passing, often noting how decentralized societies, like the Mongols, created order with minimal hierarchy. But what those records tend to miss is just how personal this feels when the wheel decides you should wash the communal undergarments. There's a lot going on here. First, let's talk about that tent setup. Each gur is placed with geometric intention. The door always faces south, not because anyone read feng shui, but because of actual logic. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And if you're opening your door in the middle of winter, you want as much solar heat as you can get. Inside, it's smoky warm and smells like a combination of leather ash and last night's boiled lamb fat. By the way, you'll want to bow slightly before stepping into anyone's gur. Not out of politeness, but because the top beam is lower than your face, and they do not have dental plans. Back outside, the wind picks up, and you spot two kids, no older than 8, expertly wrangling a trio of yaks with braided ropes. One of them looks at you, then the wheel, and shakes her head slowly. You get the feeling they already know you're going to mess this up. goat in question is absolutely not in the mood. You squat beside her, clutching a wooden pail, trying to remember if anyone ever taught you how this works. The goat blinks, flutters her lips, and kicks the bucket over. First attempt failure. As you gather the pail, a wrinkled elder with a voice like gravel walks past and mumbles something that might be a proverb or might be a curse. You nod as if enlightened. He's holding his own version of the wheel. His has far fewer icons and way more decorative bone carvings. Later you'll find out his only job is to keep the central fire pit burning, which somehow still feels more dignified than what you're doing. Here's the fringe tidbit for tonight. Mongol wheels weren't just for chores. Some archaeologists believe variations of these discs were used in seasonal fortune-telling ceremonies and may have even been early randomization tools for divining the will of the spirits. Historians still argue whether this cultural artifact was purely practical or had deeper cosmological symbolism. In this case, though, it just seems determined to embarrass you. You finally get some milk going. The goat, annoyed but bored now, allows it. And just as you find your rhythm, another spin of the chore wheel from your smirking teenage taskmaster assigns you something else firewood collection. Great, because nothing screams fun like hauling damp resinous logs across miles of tundra. You dump the half-full pail and begin walking. Your breath fogs in front of you, and the sun has fully risen, revealing a horizon so flat it might as well be the edge of the earth. All around you, chores are unfolding like synchronized clockwork tents being mended, horses being brushed, meat being sliced into impossibly thin strips for drying. You are a tiny gear in a massive machine, and the machine is powered by goat cheese willpower and centuries of inherited spite. But here's the magic: it works. No one yells, no one micromanages. The wheel turns and people move. You've landed in a world that runs on ritual, rhythm, and a surprising amount of fermented dairy. And tonight you're sleeping in the same wool-smelling gear as the goat you just barely didn't upset. You wake up tangled in wool blankets that smell faintly of smoke, sweat, and yesterday's yak. Outside, the jeer morning has barely crept across the sky, painting the horizon in streaks of cold blue and pale peach. A rooster you haven't seen but deeply resent is already shrieking into the void like it's being paid by the decibel. You rub your eyes, slip your feet into stiff felt boots, and shuffle outside, where the frost immediately reminds you that socks were probably invented for a reason. The camp is already stirring, and by stirring we mean fully operational. Smoke curls from every chimney hole. Children are tossing saddle gear onto half-asleep horses. Someone nearby is butchering an animal. Judging by the wet thump, you decide not to look too closely. You reach the chore wheel still stuck in the same upright stick in the ground and give it a tentative spin. It clicks to a stop with the grim authority of fate. It lands on a little cloud-shaped icon. Before you can ask, an older man with a salt and pepper beard and a jacket made of stitched-together fox hides grins at you. "You help with yurts today?" he says, in a gravelly voice that suggests he smoked more than one campfire in his time. You try not to groan. Yurtskers, if you're keeping up, are deceptively adorable. From a distance, they look like oversized marshmallows. Up close, they're architectural puzzles made of wood, wool, and sweat. Setting one up or taking one down is part physics, part interpretive dance, and all muscle. You're handed a pile of disassembled lattice walls and a center ring with suspiciously jagged edges. The wood is heavy, worn smooth from generations of use and smells like age and mutton fat. You trudge toward a half-built gear with a group of other unlucky souls. 2 teenage boys, a woman in her 30s, and an 8-year-old girl who immediately takes charge. Not like that, she says. As you fumble with the wall lattice, you'll curse the whole thing. You pause, unsure if that's superstition or an actual structural warning. Either way, she's right. The slats snap into place once you stop overthinking it. Mainstream history tends to gloss over the specifics of yurt construction. Most textbooks mention that they're portable, easy to heat, and withstand high winds. What they leave out is how complicated the setup actually is and how communal. Everyone pitches in, sometimes swapping jobs halfway through, and there's a deeply ingrained etiquette to it, like not stepping on the roof, felt not arguing with the person holding the support poles, and definitely not sneezing inside the yurt before it's blessed. A quirky tidbit. Some historical records suggest Mongol warriors could dismantle and pack up a yurt in under 2 hours. That sounds fast until you try folding one in. 3 degrossi winds with a mitten full of snow in your armpit. You begin to suspect those warriors weren't doing it with numb fingers and a suspiciously judging goat chewing grass beside them. The process unfolds step by step. You connect the kana, that's the wooden lattice wall, lift the uni-roof poles, and carefully balance the entire ceiling ring, the tonneau, on 2 tall supports, while praying gravity takes the day off. Blankets and felt get layered over the top like wrapping a very angry circular birthday gift. Finally, ropes are tied in precise patterns to hold it all together, as if someone was trying to invent macrame in a survival situation. Halfway through, the 8-year-old sighs and takes your rope from you. It goes over the smoke flap. She mutters, not unkindly. You nod, humbled. As you pull and tie and pull again, you start to notice something. The pace of everything around you isn't slow, but it's steady. Nobody rushes, but nothing ever stalls. There's an unspoken tempo here, like the camp breathes in time with itself. You hear a woman humming nearby, something low and rhythmic, and others pick it up. Even the chickens seem to strut in sync. Historians still argue whether this level of coordination was the product of militaristic discipline passed down from Genghis Khan's rule, or simply the natural evolution of a society built on mobility. Either way, you're impressed. And sore. Very sore. The newly finished jur gleams faintly in the morning light, its wool felt catching the sun. You stand back and admire it with the kind of satisfaction usually reserved for IKEA furniture assembled correctly on the first try. The others nod approvingly, even the 8-year-old. Then, without warning, the chore wheel is spun again. Apparently the day isn't over just because you built a house from scratch. It lands on the unmistakable hoofprint symbol. You've been assigned horse duty. You're led to the picket line, where a dozen shaggy, thick-necked Mongolian horses stand tied, staring blankly into the distance like they're contemplating existentialism or dinner, possibly both. One snorts as you approach, and you pretend not to flinch. Brushing them is a chore in itself. Their coats are dense, full of dust and bits of steppe grass. You quickly learn that brushing too hard earns you a tail swipe to the face, while brushing too gently earns you a look of total contempt. You aim for the middle ground and settle into a rhythm. It's oddly soothing until one horse suddenly shifts and plants a hoof dangerously close to your boot. You glance around and see a boy maybe 12, braiding a horse's mane into tight loops with practiced ease. You try copying him. Your braid ends up looking like a rejected pretzel. He doesn't say anything, but the horse he's working on seems to laugh. Here's your offbeat trivia. For this section, Mongol horses were sometimes fed a special broth of fermented grains during wartime. The smell allegedly was so strong that it repelled flies and possibly enemies. Whether this counts as early chemical warfare is still up for debate. Finally, you haul water from a nearby stream, sloshing it into troughs with a wooden ladle that leaks from a mysterious crack. Your hands are freezing, your back is sore, and your reward is a warm cup of tea that smells like goat and courage. And yet, it's not bad. In fact, you kind of like it. You feel yourself slipping into the rhythm of things. The wind hums through the steppe grasses, the horses stomp and snort nearby, and somewhere someone is spinning that blasted chore wheel again. You're starting to suspect that the wheel doesn't just assign tasks, it trains you. You barely have time to drink your goat-scented tea before the spinning of the wheel determines your next fate. This time the arrow points to what looks like a squiggly line. You squint. It's a smoke spiral. Someone pats you on the back and says, "You help with fire now." Then they hand you a bucket full of soot and point toward a half-collapsed yurt on the far side of the camp. Turns out you're not lighting fires, you're fixing them. More precisely, fixing chimneys, clearing flues, and coaxing stubborn hearths back into action. You shuffle over to your assigned jeer, where the inside is filled with a combination of warm ash smoldering logs and an elderly woman scowling at the stove like it personally insulted her. Her voice is soft but lethal. "You'll want to watch your head." She warns and jabs upward with a ladle. The flue pipe above is crooked. You climb onto a stool, nudge it into place, and are immediately dusted with a face full of soot. Good morning. While you're coughing and blinking through tears, she keeps stirring a bubbling pot of something. You ask what it is. She answers in a tone that could either mean bone soup or mind your business. You nod respectfully and go back to work. Fire management is a serious business here. The GER doesn't have windows, and the only light comes from the central hearth. Without a steady, smokeless fire, everything inside turns into a giant, choking cloud. That's a problem when your ceiling is made of wool, and everyone under it is already slightly allergic to everything. Maintaining the balance between warmth and ventilation takes skill, and clearly yours is not yet appreciated. Mainstream history rightly emphasizes the Mongols' legendary mobility, able to set up camp and be ready to ride in a matter of hours. But what's often missed is the domestic innovation hiding behind that reputation. Their portable stoves were cleverly designed, often with collapsible flues and dual-purpose grates that allowed them to cook heat and even dry clothing in a space the size of a shed. It's not glamorous, but it's genius. As you finish reassembling the pipe and for a sheepish smile, the old woman hands you a wooden spoon. "Taste," she says. The liquid inside the pot is beige. Suspiciously beige. You sip. It's salty, a bit sour, and has the consistency of thin oatmeal with a hint of something vaguely metallic. You give her a thumbs up because your other option is to cry. She nods once. You're dismissed. Outside, the wind cuts sharper now, and as you step around the corner of another jeer, you nearly trip over a carpet being beaten with a stick the size of a canoe paddle. A girl barely old enough to reach your shoulder is swinging it like she's avenging her ancestors. Dust flies everywhere. You nod at her. She doesn't stop. You're about to wander back toward the chore wheel when someone shouts, "We need extra hands on the arrow line." Before you can object, a hand grabs your collar and hauls you toward a shaded workspace surrounded by piles of feathers, bone fragments, and thin wooden shafts. You're making arrows now. This is surprisingly not a punishment. You sit beside a man with hands like tree roots and an expression of permanent squint. He's sharpening tips obsidian and metal, both while a trio of teenagers wrap sinew around arrowheads with fluid grace. Your job is fletching. Feathers go on the back. The key is balance. If they're crooked, the arrow spins like a drunk mosquito and misses everything. You try your best. Your first arrow flies sideways. No one mocks you. Instead, the man next to you carefully shows you the angle again. Then he gestures to a row of finished arrows lined up like soldiers. Some are dull and heavy, meant for training. Others are terrifyingly sharp, meant for war or hunting or both. You ask how they decide which is which. He shrugs. Depends who's coming, he says. Helpful. A fringe tidbit for your brain tonight. Some Mongol arrowheads were designed to whistle in flight, making a terrifying sound as they rained down. It wasn't just psychological warfare. It also helped coordinate troop movement like early aerial signaling. Historians still argue whether this technique came from earlier Chinese innovations or was a homegrown invention. Either way, it definitely would have kept you awake on the battlefield. The arrow workshop is quieter than the rest of camp. People work with focus, and even the nearby chickens seem to cluck more respectfully. As the afternoon light shifts, someone brings around a tin of dried berries and salted fat cubes, offering a kind of trail mix that tastes better than it looks. You chew politely while brushing off another arrow shaft with the corner of your sleeve, and then the laughter starts. It's not yours yet, but you can hear it coming from across camp. A small group of elders is cackling at something, passing a small clay pot between them. You don't need the chore wheel to tell you your next assignment. A teen boy appears and points directly at you. You're on hide stretching. Oh no. Stretching hides is exactly what it sounds like, drying out recently skinned animal hides and pulling them taut over wooden frames so they don't shrink or crack. It's part tanning, part torture. For you, not the hide. You're handed a curved blade and directed to a yard where several freshly scraped hides glisten in the sun like unpleasant lasagna sheets. Flies buzz everywhere. You wave them off and begin scraping. It smells like wet dog vinegar and history. As you work, a woman next to you hums. Her voice is low, soothing, and almost hypnotic. "This one's a good hide," she murmurs. "Not too old. Died of boredom, probably." You chuckle, then realize she's not joking. You scrape, pull, stretch, repeat. Your hands are raw. Your back is a complaint waiting to happen. But somehow, amid the stink and flies, you're starting to understand the rhythm. Each task today has worn you down, but in a strangely satisfying way, like erosion, shaping a riverbed. Just as you finish your final hide and straighten your aching spine, a little girl walks by and claps once. "Better than your arrows," she says. You feel strangely proud. The wind kicks up again, carrying with it the scent of dinner. You're not sure what's cooking, but based on the rest of your day, you brace for something chewy. By now, you've accepted a simple truth. You no longer control your own destiny. The chore wheel does, And as the late afternoon light softens into that golden haze that makes even the goat pens look poetic, the wheel spins again, this time at the enthusiastic insistence of a boy missing 3 front teeth and wielding it like it's Excalibur. The arrow clatters to a stop on a symbol you recognize, a horse head. Again, no, wait, it's different this time. The background is shaded. You glance around confused. Horse washing, someone says, clearly trying not to laugh. You raise an eyebrow. Washing the horses? They nod dead serious. Before festival. Must be clean. And so begins your glamorous foray into Mongol hygiene standards for animals. You're escorted to a shallow bend in a stream where a trio of shaggy horses already look like they're deeply regretting being born. One of them immediately tries to bite your sleeve. Another just stands in the water, looking betrayed. The third has its ears pinned flat, the universal equine signal for try me and die. You're handed a handful of dried moss and a skin of warm water. That's your spa kit. You crouch by the first horse, murmuring sweet nothings like, "Please don't kill me," and begin scrubbing. The horse does not appreciate your efforts. Washing a Mongol horse is equal parts gentle negotiation, strategic dodging, and quiet prayer. Their thick, weatherproof coats trap everything: dust, sweat, grass, tiny twigs, and possibly last week's dinner. You scrub, rinse, repeat, and manage to get halfway decent results before your hands go numb from the cold stream water. A fun tidbit. Mongol horses were known to survive in extreme conditions with minimal grooming, yet festival days meant every animal got a touch-up. Some even had decorative cloths placed over their flanks, and the truly spoiled ones got their manes braided with colored threads. Historians still argue whether this level of care was symbolic aesthetic or just competitive neighbor politics. You finish with a final rinse that sends a spray of icy water directly into your face. The horse, of course, remains dry. Back at camp, the energy has shifted. There's music now, string instruments twanging from the central fire circle, and the smell of cooked meat spices and something faintly sweet drifting in the air. Someone hands you a slice of dried apple and nods solemnly. You chew it slowly, half from exhaustion, half because your jaw has stopped working. Then you're waved over to a tent at the camp's edge. Not the manger, not a kitchen space. This one is quieter, lower. Inside you find 3 elderly women surrounded by piles of armor, padded cloth leather straps, and spools of thread. Ah, the sewing circle. You've been drafted into what may be the deadliest domestic space in camp. Sit, one of the women orders. You obey. Your task stitching leather bindings into the edges of lamellar armor, those rows of overlapping plates worn by Mongol warriors into battle. It's not sewing so much as miniature construction work. Each segment must be precise, tight, unyielding, and the leather strips are dry cracked and about as pliable as rawhide licorice. Too loose, one woman says, after your first attempt. Too tight, says another after your second. Maybe you just aren't meant for war, says the third, sipping something from a steaming bowl. You try again and again. Eventually your stitch passes inspection. Barely. One woman hands you a square of cloth soaked in animal grease. Rub. Make soft, she instructs. You nod, rubbing it into the next leather strap until your fingers shine. Mainstream scholars often credit Mongol success to superior horsemanship, archery, and tactics. But here's the overlooked detail: the armor. Lightweight, flexible, and terrifyingly efficient. Unlike the heavy European plate armor of the same era, Mongol lamellar allowed riders to move freely, shoot from horseback, and survive in the cold. What's less well known is that much of it was maintained and, in some cases, constructed by women. Entire families could be part of the war machine without ever riding into battle. The sun begins to dip below the horizon, throwing long shadows across the steppe. You look down and realize you've stitched 5 pieces of armor. Not well, perhaps, but stitched. Enough for now, one of the women says. She nods, satisfied. Go wash. You smell like effort. Fair. You step out into the cool dusk. Smoke snakes lazily from chimneys, and the wind has died down to a whisper. Someone's boiling water for tea. Someone else is chasing a pig with a ladle. You hear laughter. Not yours yet, but it's getting close. You head toward a shallow trench lined with smooth stones. This is the closest thing to a shower in the camp, a basin fed by a diverted stream. The water is glacial. The soap is animal fat-based, and your dignity optional. You wash quickly, splashing water under your arms and scrubbing your face until it's red. A small child watches you the entire time, chewing a stick like it's popcorn. When you finish, she hands you a cloth that smells vaguely of mint and something else you can't place. It might be goat. And then, a moment of peace. You sit by the fire with others sharing a simple dinner of rice meat and dried berries. Conversation drifts around you. No one's explaining anything. No one's asking questions. You're just here now, breathing the same smoke, wrapped in the same dusk. A woman nudges you and whispers, "Tomorrow is Sweat Lodge Day. Don't wear good clothes." You don't have any good clothes, but you nod anyway. You stare into the flames, the chore wheel forgotten for a moment, and listen to the wind hum through the grass. You wake to a smell that could charitably be described as herbal nightmare. It's strong. It's smoky. It's coming from your own clothes. Someone must have placed a bundle of burning herbs near your sleeping mat overnight. Probably a ritual of some kind. Or maybe they just think you smell bad. Either way, it's morning, and that means only one thing: the chore wheel spins again. A boy with a wooden flute announces the assignments. He plays exactly one note, grins like he's been up for hours he has, and gestures toward the wheel. You shuffle over. The disc is spun, clacking like dry bones, and lands on a symbol you haven't seen before, 2 wavy lines crossed by a vertical stroke. It looks like steam, maybe. Someone hands you a bucket of smooth stones and a damp linen wrap. Today you clean the sweat lodge, they say. Oh, that steam. The Mongol sweat lodge, or goom, isn't quite the spa experience you're hoping for. There's no cucumber water, no soft white towels, and definitely no whale music. Instead, it's a dome-like structure made from bent willow branches, covered in felt and tarps. At the center is a fire pit, now nothing but embers ringed by scorch-marked stones. Your job? Clean it. Which means hauling out the used stones, scraping the charred soot from the ground, and gathering fresh herbs. Juniper and wormwood, mostly for the next round of steaming. You duck through the low entrance and instantly inhale half a lungful of ash. It's dark inside, warm, even without a fire, and thick with lingering sweat. Not metaphorical, literal. You kneel and begin the scrape and haul dance, bumping your head 3 times in quick succession on the low ceiling. The lodge is sacred, used for spiritual cleansing, healing, and the occasional gossip session. You're told not to speak. While cleaning it, the spirits are napping. Someone whispers, "Fair enough." Mainstream historians sometimes gloss over the spiritual side of nomadic life. The Mongols were deeply animist, believing in the presence of spirits and stones, rivers, trees, and yes, probably in this very bucket you're lugging around. The sweat lodge was more than hygiene, it was a ritual, a way to reset the body and sometimes the mind. As you clean, an old woman enters behind you and begins laying out fresh herbs. She doesn't acknowledge you, but she starts humming a deep, throaty tune that seems to vibrate through the floor. You pause, your bucket in hand, and just listen. That's when you see a goat inside the sweat lodge. You blink. The goat blinks. You both hold still. The goat belches. No one says anything. You help escort the goat out gently with much coaxing and receive a nod of approval from the humming elder. You get the feeling that was some kind of test. You passed. Outside, the fresh air hits your lungs like a slap from a concerned ant. You breathe deep, wipe your hands on your already filthy tunic, and wonder what's next. The answer comes immediately, of course, the chore wheel. You're escorted to the center of camp where something chaotic is happening. Dozens of children are running in circles. Adults are yelling instructions. Someone throws a bundle of dried dung at your feet. Ah, yes. Today is fuel collection day. Time for the cow pie Olympics. If you're unfamiliar with steppe energy logistics, here's the short version. There are no trees, no wood, no convenient piles of fire logs. So the primary fuel source, dried animal dung, specifically cow and yak dung, sun-baked into brittle discs that burn cleanly-ish and slowly, mostly. Your job is to find it, pick it up, and stack it neatly for later use. Glorious. You're handed a flat basket and sent out across the steppe like a grim Easter egg hunter. You crouch, gather, and try not to think too hard about the texture. It's dry, it's cracked. It crumbles a little when you touch it. You pretend it's clay. Clay with a bold aroma. Children around you are speed gathering, laughing, shouting scores, as if this is a competition. It is. There are teams. There are winners. There is a prize, a slice of dried mango, and bragging rights. You're not technically on a team, but a tiny boy grabs your sleeve and declares, "You're with us." We're the lightning yaks. You salute. The lightning yaks are relentless. One girl has a basket nearly overflowing. Another is wearing dung armor, which you don't ask about. A quirky detail for you. Some archaeological studies have found traces of dung-fueled fires dating back over 5,000 years across Central Asia. Mongols just perfected the technique, often mixing the dried fuel with herbs to reduce smoke and increase longevity. Historians still argue whether this practice spread from nomadic innovations or emerged simultaneously in multiple regions. Either way, the smell is unforgettable. You fill your basket and return to camp, where your team celebrates by throwing dung discs into the air, like graduation caps. One lands on your shoulder. No one notices. You leave it there. It's part of the uniform now. You're sweaty, filthy, and strangely proud. You've earned dinner. But before that, a quick rinse at the stream again. This time, no child watches you, but a dog does. He looks impressed. As night falls, campfires begin to flicker across the field. Smoke curls into the star-speckled sky. Laughter hums in the background. You sit with the lightning yaks and share roasted meat skewers, passing around a pot of tea strong enough to double as boot polish. Someone spins the chore wheel again, but this time not for duty, for fun. People bet on where it'll land. Cheers erupt when it stops on milking, and everyone pretends to boo the loser who bows dramatically and accepts a ladle full of fermented mare's milk. You sip your tea and lean back against a rock still warm from the day's sun. You've cleaned a sweat lodge. You've bathed an angry horse. You've picked up poo with a sense of purpose. And strangely, impossibly, you feel content. You wake up to the familiar clatter of hooves and the unsettling realization that you've begun to recognize which goat is which by personality. The smug one who headbutts your shin for fun. Yeah, she's back. And so is the wheel. A woman with silver-streaked braids spins it today, her hands moving like someone who's done this every morning since the earth cooled. It clacks to a stop on an icon that looks suspiciously like a pot and 3 waving lines. Steam, smoke, soup. Your handler grins. Kitchen. You try not to show relief. After days of scraping hides and bathing belligerent horses, kitchen duty sounds cozy. Spoiler, it is not. You're guided to a massive yurt near the camp's center, easily twice the size of the others. Smoke curls from its vent like a lazy ghost. Inside, it's hot, chaotic, and absolutely buzzing with energy. Pots bubble on suspended iron tripods. Steam clings to the walls. A teenager chops onions with the enthusiasm of someone exorcising demons. And near the back, a row of women stir, slice, and shout over one another with practiced ease. You're assigned peeling duty turnips mostly, and a suspiciously squishy root you pretend not to recognize. Your knife is dull. Your fingers are cold. The root is slimy. You're making good time. Then someone hands you a bowl of dough and points at a wooden mold. Time to make booze Mongol dumplings. You watch the others fold the dough like origami masters, pinching and twisting until the dumplings look like tiny purses filled with mystery meat. Yours come out looking more like angry jellyfish. The teenage boy leans over and whispers, "Maybe you just serve tea." He's not wrong, but before you can flee to the kettle, the conversation around you suddenly shifts. Lowered voices, half laughs, sideways glances. The tent hums with a different kind of energy. The gossip has arrived. One woman leans in and mutters something that makes another woman gasp and cover her mouth. You don't understand the language fully, but tone is universal. Whatever was said, it was scandalous and absolutely true. You hear names, gestures. Someone slams a ladle on the counter like a punctuation mark. A younger woman rolls her eyes and mutters a retort that causes 3 people to laugh so hard they have to lean against the wall. You try not to look directly at them, as if making eye contact might get you assigned to the subject of the next rumor. Here's a charming fringe fact for your sleepy little brain. Mongol gyrs often had specific seating arrangements, with family members and guests positioned based on gender, age, and role. But the kitchen well, that was neutral ground, and often the most potent political stage in camp. Historians still argue whether the real power in Mongol camps lay with the warlords or the cooks, who could turn social mood with a glance and a well-timed dumpling. You're handed a pot of what appears to be melted butter mixed with herbs and told to just keep stirring. You do. For 20 minutes, maybe 30. At one point, the butter starts whispering things to you, possibly in Mongolian. A bowl of sudetsai salted milk tea is pressed into your hand. You sip. It's warm, creamy, and tastes vaguely of hay and good decisions. Then someone pulls a tray of finished dumplings from a steam basket, and you realize it's nearly mealtime. You help serve. Dishes are portioned with an efficiency that would impress a military quartermaster. 1 ladle scoop of soup, 2 dumplings. 1 cube of mystery meat. Repeat. A child gets 3 dumplings, you get 2. An elder gets 4. Hierarchies sneak into the simplest things. Once everyone's fed, you get to eat. Sitting on a folded wool mat near the entrance, you slurp your soup with the quiet reverence of someone who's tasted the full arc of hunger and satisfaction in a single spoonful. Just as you finish your last dumpling, and just as your body begins to whisper sweet lies about resting, you hear the flute again. Not a musical one this time. A whistle. High-pitched. Urgent. Everyone in the kitchen stiffens. You step outside. Across the field, warriors are gathering, some already mounted, others tightening straps and adjusting quivers. You spot the elder who praised your hide-stretching efforts. She's sharpening a blade and shouting orders. No panic, just movement. Someone hands you a bundle of cloth and says, simply, pack food. Turns out mealtime doesn't end when the dishes are clean. You return to the kitchen where everything has switched from calm chaos to strategic preparation. You roll dried meat into cloth, ladle thick porridge into travel skins, tie knots with trembling fingers. A woman next to you gently corrects your bundle and says, you pack like a city person. You nod, embarrassed, and try again. A mainstream fact worth remembering: Mongol warriors often traveled with pre-packed food rations, dried curds, meat rice bricks, compact high energy, and shelf-stable. They could eat in the saddle over fires, or sometimes raw in emergencies. One story tells of soldiers softening dried meat by tucking it under their saddles as they rode. No microwave required. The final bundle is tied loaded onto a horse, and just like that, half the camp is ready to ride. No one tells you whether this is a drill or a real mission. No one asks if you're coming. They just move around you smooth as silk, fast as fire. And then the wheel spins. A child points at the result. Night guard? You blink. Wait, what? But the decision is final. You're handed a lantern and a curved horn, one for visibility, the other to blow if things get dicey. You're also handed a boiled egg and a piece of bread. Dinner. As the sun sets, the colors drain from the sky, leaving only cold blue and bone-white stars. You're alone now. Just you, a flickering flame, and a horn you're scared to blow. Night on the steppe feels like being dropped onto the surface of a forgotten moon. The temperature nosedives the moment the sun slips away. The firelight from the central camp fades behind you, replaced by a rolling ocean of shadows and starlight. There are no fences, no street lamps, no helpful signs. Just you, your lantern, a wind that's gotten far too personal, and a landscape so flat it feels like the world has forgotten how to curve. Welcome to night guard duty. You're stationed on the outer edge of the camp, where the grass is taller, the sounds are stranger, and the odds of seeing something with glowing eyes are uncomfortably high. A small fire crackles beside you, just enough to keep your fingers from freezing. You huddle next to it, clutching your boiled egg like it's a talisman. A horse snorts in the dark. You nearly fall backward into the fire. You stand straining to see anything, everything. In the distance, wolves howl, not too close, but not far enough for comfort either. You grip your horn, the curved end warm from your palm. 1 blow is a warning. 2 means danger. 3. Well, let's not think about 3. Here's a fun mainstream detail to distract you. Mongol night watches weren't just for protection against raiders. They were spiritual too. Many believed that spirits roamed most freely at night, particularly near river bends or burial mounds. Guarding the camp wasn't just a physical task, it was seen as a defense against unseen forces. And if that doesn't make you feel better right now, that's because you just heard a stick break behind you. You spin around, nothing, or maybe something, a blur in the dark. You raise your lantern and squint. A dog, a fox, a spirit with poor boundaries. You take a deep breath, blow on your fingers, and start walking a slow perimeter around the outer tents. Each step crunches frost under your boots. Your breath floats like a whisper. You pass bundles of stacked firewood, a half-assembled cart, and what appears to be a forgotten saddlebag with something snoring inside it. You don't investigate. That's when you see him. Not a ghost. Not a threat. A camel. He stands about 30 yards away, perfectly still, gazing at the stars like he's solving metaphysical riddles. His silhouette is massive, lumpy, majestic, in that way only camels can be. You freeze. He blinks slowly. There is a long, silent moment where you stare at each other. He chews. You don't. You whisper. You see it too, don't you? He offers no response, just a slow, contemplative fart and a turn of his head. You're not sure what's worse, imagining threats that aren't there, or realizing that this job might just be mostly imagining threats that aren't there. Still, there's something beautiful about it. The silence, the space. The stars above are absurdly close tonight. Like someone spilled a jar of glitter over black velvet. You lie back on the grass for a minute, just watching. A fringe historical tidbit floats into your mind. Mongol astrologers often interpreted the night sky to plan migrations, festivals, and even battles. The patterns of stars weren't just decoration, they were blueprints for life. Historians still argue whether Mongol leaders used formalized charts or intuitive passed-down lore. But one thing is clear. They trusted the sky more than any map. You wonder what they'd make of your view tonight. Your brief moment of stargazing is interrupted by a rustle in the grass nearby. You freeze. The sound stops. You sit up slowly. Grab your lantern and sweep the area. Again, nothing. But you feel it. That sixth sense. Like someone's watching. Then it appears. A small boy, maybe 6 years old, bundled in layers so thick he looks like a rolled rug. He says nothing, just walks over, sits beside you, and unwraps a parcel from inside his coat. Dried meat. He tears it in half and offers you some. You accept, chewing in silence. Eventually he speaks. Cold. You nod. He doesn't say much after that. Just sits with you for a while, both of you listening to the night breathe. When he finally stands, he points at your horn. You don't blow it, he says. Unless it's real. You nod again. He walks off toward the lights of camp, disappearing into the glow like a dream. You finish your lap, return to your fire, and check the sky. Still endless. Still beautiful. Still cold enough to make your ears feel detachable. Eventually your replacement arrives. A teenage girl with a bow slung across her back and a yawn so wide you can see what she had for dinner. You hand her the horn, offer a tired salute, and stumble back toward your jeer. But the night's not quite done. The path home takes you past a group of elders still awake, sipping something that smells like it could strip paint off a wagon wheel. They nod at you. One gestures to sit. You do. They tell you stories half in words, half in gestures. About a time when wolves got too close, when a storm blew a deer 3 hills away, when a camel once ate an entire wedding feast unattended. They laugh. You laugh. Someone refills your cup. You're not sure what it is. You drink it anyway. You return to your sleeping mat long past midnight. Body aching eyes, heavy skin still tingling from the wind. As you pull the wool blanket over your shoulders, a final thought slides into your head like a whisper. You're not just observing anymore. You're part of it. You wake up to the sound of chewing, not yours. You crack one eye open and spot the smug goat again inside the jeer, this time nibbling on your discarded boot lace like it owes her lunch. She blinks at you, completely unbothered, then trots out the felt flap as if she owns the place. You sigh. The steppe doesn't sleep in, and neither do you anymore. Outside, the sun is already climbing. The camp hums with a low, familiar rhythm. Boots, thudding tent flaps, snapping horses, shaking off the cold with practiced indifference. You know what comes next. The chore wheel. It waits for you in the center of camp like a game show host with a grudge. A man in a fur hat gives it a spin, then slaps your back when it stops. You glance down. A bowl, a slash, a jagged edge. You've landed on morning after. Breakfast duty. Post-raid breakfast duty. Which means last night's silence wasn't peace. You head to the cooking tent where the air smells like scorched meat, hot blood, and something metallic you pretend not to notice. Warriors filter in, bruised and limping, some dragging broken gear behind them like half-melted, armor-plated jellyfish. No one speaks much, just nods, sits, waits. You're assigned to the porridge pot. A massive iron cauldron bubbles thickly filled with barley scraps of dried lamb and fermented goat milk. You stir, ladle, repeat. The rhythm is oddly soothing. 1 scoop per warrior, 1 hunk of bread, no small talk. There's something surreal about feeding people who just hours ago may have been swinging swords at someone else's head. They sit cross-legged, their eyes far away, quietly blowing on their soup like this is just another Tuesday. Maybe it is. Here's a historical truth to tuck into your sleep story. Tonight, Mongol warriors could ride 100 miles in a day, sleep on their saddles, and wake up ready to fight. But they weren't automatons. They mourned. They healed. They needed breakfast. Historians still argue whether their resilience came more from physical conditioning or cultural expectation. Were they hardened by environment, or simply by knowing that no one else was coming to save them? Either way, you're now part of their post-battle routine. No armor, just porridge. A boy walks up with a stitched gash across his eyebrow. He smiles. You hand him an extra ladle of soup. He doesn't thank you, but he nods in that quiet way that matters more. As the tent empties, you help scrub the bowls in freezing water that turns your fingers into angry icicles. No one offers gloves. They figure if you can stir, you can suffer. Fair. You finally sit, sipping a cup of weak tea made from dried herbs and a whisper of honey. Just when your bones begin to settle into something like comfort, a familiar figure appears at the tent flap, the wheelman. He holds it out toward you, not spinning it, holding it. Your eyes narrow. What now? He grins. You're invited. Invited. That's new. He leads you behind the outer tents past the horse lines to a small circle of men and women crouched around the wheel like gamblers. You realize what this is: influence hour. Apparently the wheel is not entirely impartial. Tokens are passed, bribes whispered, friendly suggestions made to whoever spins next. You see a girl hand over a strip of dried mango in exchange for anything but dung. Another offers a polished horsehair ribbon for a lighter day. You're handed a token, a carved bone button, and told to make your case. You hesitate, Um, Light duty. Someone laughs. No one says that out loud. You shrug. I'm new. A woman with weathered hands and an eagle's glare leans in. If you want rest, she says you offer rest. Trade labor. Trade stories. Trade favors. A quirky little tidbit for you here, despite its apparent randomness. Many Mongol decisions were built around consensus negotiation and reputation. The wheel might spin, but the hands that spin it remember everything. Historians still debate how much power women had in these systems. Some argue they ran entire camps while the men raided. Others say their influence was informal but immense. Either way, you're seeing it firsthand. You offer your bone token and a promise to help with night watch again. They nod, not agreement, acknowledgement. The wheel is spun. It lands on child care. The woman smiles. Congratulations, she says. You're babysitting. You're led to the edge of camp, where a trio of tiny tornadoes in felt coats are already halfway through disassembling a saddle. One has a knife. Another is eating mud. The third is inexplicably holding a live toad. You sit down slowly, unsure if you're the babysitter or the hostage. They size you up. One says, "You smell like milk." Another nods solemnly. "That's good. Welcome to your most dangerous assignment yet." Within minutes, you're fielding questions like, "Can we braid your eyebrows?" And "Do ghosts get cold?" You're handed a doll made from scraps of felt and what might be a bird bone. Then they teach you a game involving throwing sheep knuckles into a bowl. The rules make no sense. You lose. Spectacularly. Mainstream fact, Mongol children were trained early. By age 5 or 6. Many could ride alone, tend goats, even practice archery with miniature bows. But that doesn't mean they skipped childhood. Games, songs, and mischief were vital training too. The line between play and education was a blurry one, often smeared with dirt and goat spit. One of the kids climbs onto your shoulders and demands to see the clouds from above. You oblige. She sneezes directly into your hair and yells, "Clouds confirmed." The others applaud. Then out of nowhere, the knife-wielding one sits next to you and asks, "Are you staying?" You pause. You hadn't thought of it like that. "I guess I am for now." She nods. "Then you need a better hat." And just like that, she hands you a lopsided fur cap that smells like onions and destiny. You wear it. The others approve. You sit with your small army of chaos, watching the camp move around you, tent repairs gear, sharpening wool, drying in strips across the horse lines. It's alive. It's tired. It's somehow home. The goat trots past again. You salute her. She ignores you. Your new hat is itchy, asymmetrical, and smells suspiciously of pickled turnips. But it's warm, and more importantly, it's earned you honorary entry into the weird little kingdom of camp children, which means you now belong to a very loud, very sticky guild of small humans who wake up at sunrise and consider personal space a myth. You don't mind it as much as you thought. The chore wheel appears again by mid-morning, of course. It always does. But this time one of your tiny captors spins it for you, laughing maniacally as it clacks into its verdict. The symbol A chalice. No way to hoofprint inside a circle. You glance up. You serve drinks today, someone announces. You blink. Like tea. They shake their heads. Blood? That kind of morning. You're herded toward the gathering tent, half storage room, half celebration hall, half unregulated chemistry lab. Inside, a few serious-looking people are preparing the first round of air rag and something less ceremonial, but infinitely more intense horse blood smoothies. Now, before you panic, let's clarify no one's asking you to make them just serve them. Still, it's a bit of a wake-up call. Here's the actual mainstream fact. Mongols traditionally drank horse blood in emergencies, especially during long rides where carrying bulky supplies wasn't possible. A small vein on the horse's neck would be tapped, and the blood mixed with milk or broth for quick nourishment. Horses would recover quickly, and no animal was killed in the process. Think of it as the world's most sustainable, ethically sourced protein shot. And yes, you're now pouring it into cups made from horn. You're careful, very careful. The liquid is dark, rich, and slightly gelatinous, like a smoothie someone made without any joy. Most of the older warriors drink it like water. A few kids try it and gag. One sprints out of the tent dramatically. The elders just chuckle. A small woman in her 70s with a fox fur cloak slaps the table and yells, "Now we trade time." Traders from another camp have arrived, bright robes, thick boots, eyes always moving. They speak quickly, laugh loudly, and open sacks filled with silk, salt, spices, and bolts of dyed fabric that shimmer like lizard skin. You're immediately reassigned from beverage duty to hold this and look serious. You hold a bundle of wool and try to look like you understand international commerce. Behind you, a man argues the value of a goat hide versus 3 blocks of pressed tea. Someone else pulls out a glimmering knife with an ivory handle. The Mongol side counters with cheese. Yes, cheese. Because in this world, cheese is currency. And not just any cheese. This is dried curd so sharp it could qualify as a weapon. It doesn't melt. It doesn't rot. It might outlive you. Here's a quirky detail. Some traders carried tiny balance scales in their sleeves, allowing them to weigh gold dust or tea leaves on the spot. Others relied on tasting. If your cheese cracked a molar, it was deemed aged enough. Historians still argue whether this form of barter held more social value than coin-based economies. But one thing is certain, cheese diplomacy is real. You watch a particularly tense exchange over a dyed sash. Eventually, someone throws in a lambskin coat and the deal is sealed. Everyone smiles. The smoothie tent roars in approval. You're pulled aside and told to deliver a message. Tell the matriarch we need more fermented milk by sunset. You salute without thinking. Then you realize you have no idea where she is. Your search takes you across camp from the back pens where horses graze to the elder's tent, where 2 men are arguing about whether someone stole a comb again. Eventually you find her kneeling by the stream, rubbing herbs into a strip of cloth. You deliver the message. She nods, doesn't speak, just gestures to a nearby pot and says, "You can help." So now you're fermenting mare's milk. You hold the leather pouch as she pours in the frothy liquid. Then you tie it tightly and begin the shaking process. An hour of bouncing it against your knee or swinging it rhythmically while you walk. No, really? This is how traditional arag is made. Fresh horse milk is poured into a leather sack, mixed with old fermented residue, and churned constantly for hours. The result is fizzy, tangy, slightly alcoholic, and surprisingly refreshing if you're sleep-deprived and open-minded. You sling the sack over your shoulder and begin walking slow circles around the camp. Occasionally someone stops you and gives it a shake. One boy grabs it and starts dancing with it like a sack race trophy. It works. The milk sloshes happily. You pass the goat. She sniffs the arag pouch, unimpressed. You stick out your tongue. She headbutts your leg. Fair play. Finally, when the shaking's done and the cloth bulges like a balloon of questionable intent, you return it to the matriarch. She opens it, sniffs, nods, and scoops out a ladle's worth for testing. Then she offers you a sip. You hesitate, you sip. It's sour, slightly carbonated, weirdly creamy, like kombucha made by a Viking. You smile. She grins back, claps you on the shoulder, and says, "Not bad for a beginner." You make your way back to your sleeping mat as dusk descends again. The wind picks up, rippling the grass like the ocean. Somewhere a flute plays. Somewhere else someone is retelling the gossip of the day with wild hand gestures. And you curl up with the new hat still askew, a faint tang of fermented milk on your breath, and a quiet sense that you've survived yet another round of fate's wheel. You sleep so deeply you dream in goat noises. When you wake, there's a crust of dried milk on your cheek. Your hat's covering only one ear, and your legs feel like you borrowed them from a much older version of yourself. But you're upright, and in Mongol camp terms, that means you're ready for more. Outside it's colder, the kind of cold that snaps at your nostrils and makes your breath float like you're smoking invisible pipes. The morning fog rolls low across the camp, swallowing up the jurors in slow motion. From somewhere within it, you hear the sound of "Yes, the wheel." Today's spin feels different. Maybe it's the silence. Maybe it's the way everyone avoids eye contact. The disc spins and lands. A curved feather, a wax seal, a pair of stylized eyes. You've been summoned to the camp's invisible bureaucracy. A teenage boy in an immaculate tunic and terrifyingly clean boots appears at your elbow. "This way, please." You follow him through the fog to a low-slung jeer, tucked behind the kitchen tent, unmarked, silent, suspiciously tidy. Inside, the air smells like ink, hot metal, and authority. "Welcome to the scribe's tent." You expected scrolls. You get stacks of birch bark leather strips and cloth pages inked with neat rows of vertical text. No one speaks. 4 people sit cross-legged in the dim light, writing, sorting, and muttering in a language that sounds halfway between poetry and military code. A woman beckons you over and hands you a brush. "You write," she says. Not a question. You panic. But your task is simple copy symbols. From one page to another, a basic courier ledger. Who traded what? Which families arrived yesterday? How many sheep? How many broken saddles? Even which children received punishments, and for what? 3 for throwing fermented berries at the goat, 1 for stealing someone's hat. That last one hits close to home. Here's your mainstream fact. While Mongol culture is known for oral tradition, written records were essential, especially during the empire's expansion. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, the Uyghur script became the standard for administrative purposes. Mongol scribes, often multilingual, kept records in everything from trade tallies to diplomatic correspondences, using a decentralized but surprisingly meticulous information system. And yes, they tracked chores too. You carefully transcribe the names of 24 horses and their riders. You miscopy one. The woman sees. You feel her judgment like a spear to the spine. She doesn't say a word. She just hands you another page. This continues for hours. Eventually your hand cramps into a claw, and you're dismissed. No ceremony, just a grunt. You step outside, blinking into the now sunlit camp, and realize you haven't spoken for most of the morning. It feels peaceful. Until someone shouts your name. Ritual fire prep. Of course. You're redirected to a central fire pit now being cleared and rebuilt for the nightly gathering. The fire here isn't just for warmth, it's symbolic, ceremonial, and closely monitored. You're handed a bundle of dried herbs, a flintstone, and a tiny iron bowl. Your job? Feed the flame with care. You kneel, blow gently on the embers, and coax them to life like you're waking a cranky deity. The herbs crackle, the smoke turns blue. Someone sings behind you, low and rhythmic. Not a song so much as a chant, a heartbeat for the camp. Others join. You don't understand the words, but the rhythm anchors you. You're offered a wooden ladle with something thick and warm inside turnip stew, laced with something fermented, obviously. You sip, and your soul makes a sound. A fringe tidbit to savor some Mongol camps used fermented root-based brews, not just for meals, but for ritual cleansing. Turnips, especially when combined with juniper, were believed to calm the fire within. Historians still argue whether this was metaphorical or meant to aid digestion during long winter nights. Either way, your stomach feels oddly tranquil. As the fire grows, so does the gathering. As the children huddle near their parents, elders sit on low stools wrapped in layers. Musicians appear, one with a two-stringed morin kur carved into the shape of a horse's head, another with a jaw harp that twangs like a cartoon spring. A man beside you passes a carved pipe. You decline politely. He shrugs and lights it anyway, the smoke curling around his beard like it's looking for secrets. And then, from the darkness, a storyteller begins. His voice is rough silk. He speaks slowly, deliberately drawing the night into the space between his words. The tale is about a warrior who once lost his horse and had to become a fox to find it again. You're not sure if it's metaphor or memory. Doesn't matter. Everyone listens. The children fall asleep first, then a few adults. The fire crackles on. You're asked to toss in a final handful of herbs. You do. The flame snaps, then steadies. The man beside you leans in. Tomorrow's wheel will spin for you differently, he says. You want to ask what that means? But he's already asleep, snoring like someone who's wrestled goats in his dreams. You stay by the fire a little longer, watching, listening. You realize that the scribes you worked with this morning, they probably recorded this fire, this story, this moment. You're now part of the record. Just another mark on birch bark, passed from hand to hand. You wake with the taste of turnip stew still clinging to your tongue, and the embers of last night's fire still glowing behind your eyes. The cold bites sharper this morning, like the steppe has decided to test your resolve now that you've lasted more than a week. Your blanket has migrated halfway across the gur, and your right boot is missing. Again, you suspect the goat. You always suspect the goat. You hobble out into the brisk dawn just as the chore wheel makes its dramatic entrance, carried in the arms of a boy who's clearly had 3 breakfasts already. He sets it down with a ceremonial grunt and gives you the honor of spinning. You oblige. It clicks again, stops on a new symbol, 3 curved lines above a flat horizontal one. Fire wind. Nope. Sound. You've been summoned to help with music practice. A girl with a mouthful of bread grabs your sleeve and pulls you toward a small gathering near the horse pens. There, a dozen or so young people sit in a semicircle, each holding an instrument or something adjacent to one. There are morin kurs, jaw harps, rattles made of bone and shell, and even a long curved horn that looks like it was borrowed from a mythological creature. Your task, keep rhythm. They hand you 2 polished stones. You're now percussion. You clack the stones together tentatively. The girl beside you frowns. Not like that she says, and demonstrates sharp syncopated like a heartbeat after a sprint. You try again. Better. A few others nod. The instructor, an older man whose expression is permanently unimpressed, begins humming a deep, gravelly note. Others join. The jaw harp twangs. The strings tremble. You clack in time. It's not a performance. It's a ritual. Here's a mainstream historical gem for your collection. Mongol music wasn't just entertainment. It was a form of oral memory, a way to transmit legends, instructions, warnings, and identity. Songs guided migrations. Chants prepared warriors for battle. Lullabies taught babies the names of stars and ancestors. Historians still debate how much of Mongol culture has been lost due to the decline of these oral traditions, especially during Soviet-era suppressions. And you're now part of preserving it. Badly, with rocks. But it's strangely calming. The cold air hums with your group's chant. The sound blends with the wind, with the distant lowing of cattle, with the occasional horse snort. You begin to feel your pulse, slow your breath, sync with the rhythm. The instructor stops and says, "Good. You have soft ears. You'll take the compliment." After practice, you help carry the instruments back into their cases, wooden boxes lined with wool and padded with scraps of silk. You pass the goat. She's stolen your boot again. You wave your socked foot at her. She doesn't care. Then comes a tap on your shoulder. Elder wants you. You follow the voice to the central fire pit, now cleared of ash, where a woman in a crimson cloak sits beside a mound of parchment. She hands you a list. You read it. It's a chore roster. Your name is on it. Repeatedly. Apparently you've been scheduled for advanced duties now. No more luck of the spin. You've become dependable. You try not to panic. Your first task, help a visiting healer set up for a day of checkups. Her tent is smaller than the others, but crowded with bundles of dried roots, clay jars of ointments, and one truly terrifying bowl labeled only with a symbol that resembles a grimacing face. Your job is to boil water, hand her clean cloth, and try not to look squeamish when she resets someone's dislocated thumb with a loud pop and zero warning. A patient limps in with a swollen ankle. The healer nods to you. Tea. You fetch it, spill a little, pretend you didn't. She says nothing, which is somehow worse than criticism. While you wait for the next patient, she lets you grind herbs with a stone pestle. The scent is sharp, sage, dried onion, something floral and bitter. You ask what it's for. Dreams, she says simply. Some people sleep too loud. A quirky fact, Mongol folk medicine often blended practical and mystical elements. While many treatments involved herbs, massage, or simple hygiene, others relied on symbolic rituals. Tying colored threads to fingers, whispering into smoke, or hanging specific bones over sleeping areas. Historians still argue whether these rituals were believed literally or metaphorically, but no one denies their persistence across centuries. At some point, the healer pauses. You listen well, she says. Motioning for you to sit, she teaches you a short chant. Simple, repetitive, almost a lullaby. You practice it while she wraps herbs in cloth pouches. These go under pillows, she explains. Keeps the bad dreams tied down. She hands you one for tonight. The day drifts onward. You continue fetching things, lighting fires, comforting children who've stubbed their toes or swallowed pebbles by accident. You deliver water to the warrior's tent. You help fold woolen blankets into careful spirals, a tradition believed to trap warmth for tomorrow. And just as the sky begins to shift from blue to gold, a bell rings across the camp. The wheel is rolled out once more, not for chores, but for honors. It lands on a goat. Everyone laughs, except you.
The goat flicks her tail smugly. One of the children walks up to you holding a small wooden token carved with the symbol of the camp circle wind arrow. They press it into your hand. You lasted. You look at it, then at them, then back at the wheel, which seems for the first time to be smiling. The camp wakes before the sun as usual, but this time there's a shift in the air, not just frost, not just the low huffing of horses or the clatter of mourning bowls. It's movement, real movement. The camp is preparing to relocate. You blink the sleep from your eyes and realize half the tents are already coming down. A boy sprints past you holding a saddle the size of a bear. A woman with a baby strapped to her back tosses a cooking pot into a pack as casually as if she's loading a lunchbox. Someone yells for rope. Someone else yells at the rope. Today there is no chore wheel. Today everything is your chore. You throw on your boots, both of them miraculously intact, and start helping where you can. You begin by folding the outer layers of your own gear, working alongside 3 others who seem determined to beat every speed record set by humankind. Strips of felt are rolled tight and tied with hide cords. Wooden lattice walls are collapsed like giant fans. The smoke flap is detached, folded, and slung over a boy's back like a cape. Everything is loaded. Everything has a place. Every hand has a job. You're handed a bundle of tent poles and pointed toward a wagon already groaning with gear. You balance the bundle atop a stack of saddlebags and wedge it into place with a wool blanket. The cart shifts slightly, but holds. Mainstream fact-time Mongol encampments could be disassembled and reassembled within hours, a vital trait for a society that moved with the seasons and the needs of the herd. The mobility wasn't random, it was strategic. Spring meant lush pastures to the north. Winter meant shelter near rivers or valleys. Every piece of the jur was designed for speed and reuse. You help harness horses next. You've learned to dodge the kicks. Mostly. You whisper to one as you buckle a strap under its belly. It snorts in response, and in what you interpret as approval does not trample you. Then comes the part you weren't expecting: inventory. You're handed a wooden tally stick, etched notches lined with faded red ink, and asked to count wool bundles, then sheep, then children. You lose count of the sheep at 46, which is unfortunate because there are clearly more than 46. A woman corrects you by yelling a number in your ear and thrusting a brush into your hand. You now mark each sheep on the back with a swipe of colored dye to avoid recounting them. It doesn't work. You mark the same sheep 5 times. She does not complain. Nearby, the healers load bundles of herbs and clay pots onto a smaller cart. You're told to carry the most fragile one, a jar of fermented milk, so aged it might sue for retirement benefits. You tuck it against your chest and walk slowly, like you're carrying a sleeping baby with anger issues. A child runs up beside you and offers help. You decline. The jar rattles ominously. The ground beneath your feet is damp and uneven. The wheels of the cart ahead sink into soft earth, groaning under the weight. You lend a shoulder, pushing against the wooden edge as the oxen pull. Mud squelches around your boots. You slip, catch yourself, and feel the cart lurch forward. Cheers erupt. Someone hands you a dried apricot. You eat it in one bite. The wind shifts. A scout on horseback returns from the west. He says something to the elders low and fast. They nod. A decision is made. The entire caravan begins to turn. You follow.
The pace is slow. Camp doesn't sprint, it drifts. The herd leads part of the way bleating and lowing as if they know the route better than the humans. Children ride in carts. Elders walk with staffs. You walk beside a girl balancing a ceramic pot on her head and reciting what you suspect are swear words disguised as prayers. A quirky tidbit to tuck under your pillow, some Mongol camps used singing as a way to coordinate during travel. Certain songs set the pace. Others served as signals, rest soon, storm ahead, or you forgot your cousin again. Historians still debate whether these chants were improvised or passed down. But you hear one now, low, rhythmic, shared by 3 women walking just ahead of you. The path turns toward higher ground. You see the new campsite forming in the distance, a wide plateau ringed with short grass and low stones. The air is cleaner here, sharper, like the sky has been scrubbed. Then the real work begins, reassembly. You help unload, set up, tie, stretch, peg. You're working beside people who know the angles of every rope by heart. Your hands blister again, your knees ache, and still you keep going. You build your own gur, now mostly solo, with occasional correction from a nearby child who folds, felt like origami, and isn't afraid to critique. When the final roof pole is set and the ropes are tight, you step back. It stands. A little crooked, a little patched, but it stands. You drop to your knees and laugh. It comes out strange, like a hiccup and a sigh. Someone hands you a bowl of soup. You slurp it without checking what's in it. Doesn't matter, it's hot, it's earned. As night creeps in again, the fire pits are lit. This time they're smaller, temporary. The big rituals will wait. You sit with your back against your freshly built home. The goat walks past, gives you a nod. Or maybe it's a threat. Hard to say. The stars return sharp, infinite familiar. You've moved, but the sky has not. It watches. You're part of the system now. Part of the wheel. Not just spinning it, but holding it steady. And as the wind tugs at the flap of your new home, you smile, because tomorrow you'll do it all again. You wake in a new place, but the same goat is staring at you. Somehow, she's already stolen half your blanket, is chewing on your sleeve, and seems to have no respect for the concept of personal space. You blink groggily at her. She blinks back, unconcerned. Then she snorts and waddles out of your freshly rebuilt gear, leaving behind an impressive trail of hoof prints and disrespect. Outside, the steppe smells different, fresher. The new campsite is perched on a gentle rise, the grass thicker, the air sharper. It feels cleaner, like the earth itself took a bath. Birds you didn't hear before are chirping overhead. The wind rustles the tents like a mother shaking a sleeping child awake. And so begins the day. With a yawn, a breeze, and the wheel. It's already spinning when you reach the camp center this time, operated by a woman with arms like tree trunks and an expression that suggests she's wrestled bears and won. The arrow ticks, stops. You're assigned to livestock tending, which sounds innocent until you realize it means everything that poops and breathes. You begin with the sheep. Now, sheep in the steppe are not the dainty, cartoonish fluff balls you might be imagining. These are rugged, thick-skinned animals with attitudes. You're tasked with checking hooves for cracks and rot, applying ointment where needed, and coaxing them into fresh pasture without getting headbutted into oblivion. You succeed on 2 of those counts. A sheep named Moko gives you a look, then flops over dramatically and refuses to move. You try pulling, pushing, begging. Eventually you bribe him with a pocket apple. He considers, then nibbles your boot instead. Classic Moko. Next come the cattle, slower, calmer, but with eyes that make you feel judged. You help brush out their thick winter coats, using a bristled paddle and a rhythmic scraping motion that produces enough hair to knit several new tent liners. A child walks by holding a bowl of milk, pauses, and watches you with clear horror. Too fast, she says. You're giving him anxiety. The cow snorts in agreement. You slow down. Mainstream fact-time Mongol livestock management wasn't just survival, it was science. Each species had its own scheduled grazing pattern and weather sensitivity. Families rotated herds with seasonal migration, strategically preventing overgrazing. Herd animals were so central to daily life that they influenced everything from diet to clothing to diplomacy. Mongol taxes, often paid in wool or horses. Fringe tidbit for you. Some herders believed that talking to animals gently, respectfully kept the herd healthier. So yes, the quiet murmuring you heard last night, probably someone giving a motivational speech to their yak. And now it's your turn. You find yourself whispering encouragements to a group of stubborn goats as you attempt to rebind their pen with fresh rope. One escapes. You chase it. It stops to eat a thistle. You tackle it. It farts in your face. You emerge victorious and slightly traumatized. Just when you think you're finished, a woman appears holding a bundle of cloth and a look that says, "You're not done until I say so." "You're helping with births," she announces. You blink. Like animals, she doesn't answer, just walks. You follow. Behind the outer ring of gers is a small, quiet enclosure, low fences, soft ground, fresh hay. Inside, a pregnant ewe is pacing belly low, breathing heavily. The midwife kneels beside her, arranges her tools, some cloth, a short, curved blade, a bowl of warm water, and begins to murmur softly. "Your job. Hold the light. Stay quiet. Don't faint." The ewe groans. The wind picks up. The midwife works fast, calm, whispering instructions you don't understand but somehow follow anyway. A few grunts, a few tense moments, and suddenly life. Wet, wiggling, loud. A lamb. You stare. It's small, ridiculous, perfect. The mother nuzzles it immediately. The midwife nods and says, "Now you clean." She hands you a rag and walks away. You cradle the lamb, gently wiping away mucus and fluid, feeling its tiny chest rise and fall. It sneezes on you. You don't mind. You sit there for a while, letting the lamb rest against your knees, the ewe blinking sleepily nearby. You wonder if the chore wheel knows what it's doing, if it picks moments like this on purpose. Later, you're called to gather dry dung because balance must be restored. You fill baskets, your back aches. You accept this. You add it to the growing list of things that no longer surprise you: being head-butted by goats, bribing sheep, catching lambs with your bare hands, and being scolded by children half your size. As the sun tilts westward, you return to camp carrying your last bundle of fuel. The fires are already lit. A stew simmers. Laughter floats through the air. You sit, sip water from a leather flask, and exhale. Someone passes you a bowl of rice and meat, and for the first time, no one tells you to eat faster or move left. You've become part of the background noise. Not a visitor. A fixture. That night you're assigned no job, no duty, no watch. You're free. You walk alone past the herds where the livestock sleep, standing, breathing slowly. You pass the goat. She doesn't even look up. You sit beneath the stars, your new stars, on your own patch of grass, and listen to the wind, to the silence, to the soft sounds of a world in motion that somehow now includes you. The wind wakes you, not with violence, but with purpose. A long, low hum through the grass that nudges your eyelids open like a whisper, reminding you that even if you wanted to sleep in, the steppe doesn't care. You sit up slowly, stretching muscles that now respond more like joints on a well-used yurt frame, creaky but still serviceable. The fire from last night has burned down to faint red coals, and the sky above is just beginning to blush pink behind the far hills. You've learned not to wait for the wheel anymore, because today, before anyone spins anything, you're already in motion. Someone needs help tending to the horses. Without being asked, you go. The horses greet you with foggy snorts and stamping hooves, their breath rising like smoke in the cold morning air. You run your fingers along their thick necks, checking straps and buckles. You toss feed into shallow bowls and stroke their sides when they sidestep nervously from the cold. Then you notice something strange. One of the older stallions, Batar, isn't eating. He's standing still, head low, ears twitching like antennas, trying to catch signals from a different world. You call for someone. A man in his 50s limps over. He inspects Batar, gently lifts a hoof, presses along the rib cage. Sickness, he says? Not dying? Not yet. You offer to help. He hands you a jar of thick, dark paste and shows you how to apply it beneath the horse's jaw, then along the chest. It smells like garlic ash and despair. You rub it in with care. Then you hold the animal's head steady as he administers a fermented root elixir by mouth, the liquid gurgling down with an undignified slurp. The horse doesn't protest, just breathes. You stay beside him longer than you're told to, brushing slow circles down his side. Mainstream historians often forget the emotional side of Mongol life. For a people so closely tied to animals, not just for transport, but survival. The death of a horse wasn't just an inconvenience. It was grief, and sometimes reverence. There are old songs about horses lost in storms or who never returned from war. They're mourned like comrades, like family. Eventually, Batar lifts his head, slightly. A good sign. You pat his neck, whisper nothing in particular, and step away. That's when a girl finds you. There's a birth, she says, but not a lamb. Come now, you follow. It's a dog this time, one of the shaggy steppe guardians who run perimeter patrol like unpaid security officers with anger management issues. She's lying in a shallow hollow near a tent flap belly, round eyes wide. Several women are gathered, murmuring calmly. A midwife, you recognize, the same one who helped deliver the lamb, nods at you to sit. The puppies come quickly. 4, then 6, 8. A flurry of wet, squirming fur and yelps. You help dry them off with scraps of felt. You hold one close to your chest until it settles. The mother licks your hand once. Approval, perhaps. You've helped bring life into this world again. You're beginning to wonder if the wheel is broken or just finally acknowledging your upgrade in status. Here's a quirky tidbit. Mongol dog names are sometimes deliberately unpleasant. Names like Pox or Stink are given to puppies to trick evil spirits into thinking they aren't worth taking. Historians still argue whether this practice was widespread or only common in certain clans. But you overhear a boy name one of the puppies Mold. Maybe it's still alive and well. Your hands are covered in fur and something you choose not to analyze too closely. You wash them in the stream, which is colder than betrayal, then sit with a bowl of soup near the central fire. An elder sits beside you. No words, just shared warmth. After a while, you're given a new assignment without a spin, without a vote. Go walk the herd, someone says. They trust you now. You blink, then smile. The herd goats sheep. A few stubborn cows are grazing in a ring, a few 100 yards from camp. You circle them slowly, keeping your eyes on stragglers, waving away the occasional wanderer with a stick and some gentle cursing. They respond like teenagers being told to turn down their music. While walking, you begin singing. You don't know the words, so you invent your own soft, silly rhythmic. The herd seems to like it, or at least they don't run away. A boy appears beside you, hands you a leather ball, says nothing, then runs. You chase. What follows is a chaotic, breathless, joyful game of kull or step ball, no rules, no teams, just speed and improvisation. You dodge a goat vault, a rock get tackled by a laughing child, and throw the ball so hard it vanishes into a cluster of confused chickens. Everyone cheers. You fall to the grass laughing, heaving, dizzy from movement and wind, and the sheer absurdity of having fun when your knees feel like soup. Mainstream note Mongol games weren't reserved for festivals. They were part of daily life training, coordination, building community, even resolving disputes. Wrestling, archery, and racing were serious affairs. But games like this, they're about joy, a survival skill in their own right. Later, you're handed a bowl of milk. It's warm, frothy, sweetened slightly with herbs. It tastes like a reward, like the camp saying thank you. The goat walks by. She doesn't steal anything. She just nods. Respect. That night, there is no ritual, no chant, no fire. Just stars, cold grass, and a sense of enoughness you can't quite name. You lie down beside your dear hands, behind your head hat, over your eyes, and smile, because the wheel may spin forever, but for now, you're exactly where you belong. The wind is up early again, tugging at the tent flaps like an eager toddler with secrets to share. You wake before the goat, before the flute, before even the first pot of tea has begun to steam. And for once, you don't wait to be summoned. You step into the morning because you already know where you're needed. Down by the far edge of the camp, the scouts are returning. You recognize one of them by the deep scar on his cheek and the fact that he always rides like the saddle's an afterthought. He dismounts and mutters to the elders. You catch only a few words. Storm coming. The camp shifts into that quiet kind of urgency you've come to recognize. No panic, just movement. You grab ropes, reinforce stakes, help double-layer tent walls with fresh felt. When someone hands you a long wooden pole, you don't ask why. You just carry it. Your feet move automatically now. You've become a useful piece of the machine. Mainstream fact, the Mongols didn't fight nature, they adapted to it. Windbreaks were created using carts and animal hides. Tents could be lowered, re-angled, or anchored with stone rings. Even cooking fires were redesigned to work in sudden downpours. What looked like chaos to outsiders was actually a well-drilled choreography of survival. You help anchor a cart against the westernmost tents, adding stones around its wheels. The sky above has already begun to darken, and the air is thick with that strange smell that always arrives just before rain, ozone, and dust, and something ancient. Then unexpectedly, the chore wheel reappears. Someone rolls it into the center of the camp like a dare. No ceremony, just a knowing grin. Spin it, they say. It's tradition. You do. The arrow clatters against the wood circles, then lands. The water icon. You're on storm prep hydration duty. It sounds simple until they hand you 2 goatskin bladders, a stack of pails, and point to the distant stream that's already swelling from mountain runoff. Your job is to fill, haul, and distribute as much clean water as possible before the rain makes everything undrinkable for hours. You walk, haul, walk again. Your arms burn. Your legs ache. A girl hands you a slice of dried apricot between loads. You accept it like treasure. You slip once water splashes all over your front. A nearby boy giggles. You pour a little on his head in retaliation. The elders pretend not to notice. Quirky tidbits of Mongol clans believed that catching rain in your hands and rubbing it over your eyes could improve vision and ward off bad dreams. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic purification or a literal belief in sky-blessed water. But as the first drops start to fall, you try it anyway just in case. You're soaked before long, not just damp, drenched. The storm rolls over the hills like a wool-cloaked army. Wind screams across the steppe, tearing through grass and yanking at ropes. You run back to camp, shielding your face, holding tight to the last bladder of water like it's your most valuable possession. Tents shudder, but hold. Fires hiss, but survive. You duck into your own gear dump, your sodden boots by the door, and collapse onto the floor, dripping, steaming, exhausted. And then you hear it. Laughter. It rises from outside, unbothered by the rain carried on the wind, like bird song with a punchline. You poke your head out. Children are dancing, not hiding, not fussing, dancing. Barefoot arms, raised mouths open to the sky. A boy slides across a slick patch of grass and lands on his rear with a grin. A girl spins in place until she falls over giggling. You step out, shrugging off the water, and join them. Why not you twirl, splash, slip, and forget everything? Your name, your aching shoulders, the fact that your socks will never be dry again. None of it matters, just the rain, just the rhythm. Later soaked to the marrow, but glowing with some unnameable joy, you help pass out dry felt from storage. The camp begins to dry. Fires are rekindled. Stew is ladled out in generous scoops. And tonight the circle around the fire is smaller but warmer, tighter. Your spot is waiting. So is your bowl. And so is a carved wooden token placed at your seat, shaped like the wheel. It has your name on it. They carved it while you were hauling water. You run your thumb across the etching, small and uneven and perfect. Tonight's story is told by an elder with a voice like gravel and thunder. He speaks of a flood that once swallowed 3 camps whole and a single yurt that stood because its ropes were knotted by someone who cared more about the work than the credit. He doesn't look at you, but somehow you feel seen. Sleep comes quickly, and in your dream the wheel spins not with chores, but with memories, moments, people, and your name again and again. The storm has passed, but it leaves its mark. The grass lies flattened in wide circles like something heavy slept on it. The tents glisten under the morning sun, their sides dark with dampness. There's a stillness that feels earned, like the steppe itself is pausing, catching its breath. You wake in dry clothes that someone must have placed near your mat while you slept. Your boots are by the door, freshly scraped of mud. A folded strip of cloth sits atop them with a single symbol, stitched in red thread, a small, simple wheel. No name this time, just trust. You step outside and stretch the wind, calmer today, curling gently around the tents like a curious pet. The The air smells of wet wool, boiled milk, and grass just beginning to forgive yesterday's trampling. The wheel has not returned. Not because it's missing, but because it's no longer needed. You've graduated. Today your assignment comes by gesture alone.
A woman in a turquoise tunic nods at you from the animal pens and you go. Today's task is healing, but not the mystical kind. No herbs, no chants, just time, touch, and patience. You're tending to animals affected by the storm, skittish horses, limping goats, a cow who apparently panicked and head-butted a yurt pole hard enough to earn herself a bandage. You work slowly, gently, wrapping wounds, smoothing down fur, whispering nonsense. No one watches you. No one needs to. You're doing it right. One goat shivers under your hand, then leans into you with a sigh that's surprisingly human. You scratch behind her ears and try not to feel too proud. A boy brings you a bowl of porridge for breakfast, still steaming, sweetened with dried berries. You eat it squatting near the sheep, one hand holding the bowl, the other, chewing off a particularly nosy lamb who thinks it deserves a taste. Mainstream note: the Mongol world revolved around resilience, not resistance. Things broke.
Animals spooked. People stumbled. The solution wasn't to pretend it didn't happen, it was to mend together. Tending animals wasn't beneath anyone. Even generals might stop to bind a colt's injured leg. Strength wasn't in denial, it was in recovery. After breakfast, you're asked to help repair some of the carts damaged in the storm. You work with a trio of older men who communicate entirely, in grunts, head nods, and the occasional sarcastic snort. You understand everything. You sand rough wood smooth, replace a wheel pin, patch a tarp with sinew and waxed thread. Your hands move with purpose now. You notice that. You feel it. Good one, man says when you finish. Then after a pause, not terrible, glowing praise. Later, as the sun climbs, you help redistribute gear between wagons. Some families are preparing to split off following a separate route for a seasonal trade meetup. You help tie bundles, double-check harnesses, even sharpen a few axe heads. A boy shows you how to balance the load by weight, not shape. A crooked cart is a broken journey, he says, as if repeating something he's heard all his life. You nod, then repeat it aloud softly. You'll remember that one. The mood is light today, relief mixed with readiness. The storm tested the camp and it passed. People laugh more freely. A girl dances near a fire with a pine branch in each hand. Someone plays a string instrument in the background, its notes sharp and slow like rain hitting a drum. You're handed a lump of butter and told to churn it by slapping it in a goatskin bag with a stick. This is not a glamorous job, but it's oddly satisfying. You slap, the bag squelches, you slap again, the camp sings behind you, you slap again, butter begins to form. You're told it's good luck. If you spill none, you spill a little. Ah well. Here's your quirky detail: churned butter. From horse or yak milk urim was sometimes used to anoint warriors before battle. Not as a weapon, but as a blessing. Smeared on cheekbones and shoulders, it was said to soften the blow of steel and remind the soul of its body. Historians still argue if this was ritual or comfort food gone spiritual. Either way, it smells amazing. As evening rolls in, you help distribute the fresh butter with flatbread. Every tent gets a share. Even the goats get a lick. One tries to eat the whole bowl. You rescue it, barely. You think the goat is starting to respect you. A little. That night the fire is smaller. Not for lack of wood, but because everyone seems content. The heat comes not from flame, but from company. People sit close. Stories pass around like soup bowls,
gently, generously. You're asked to tell one. You hesitate. Then quietly you share the story of the storm, of the wheel, of the goat who stole your boots, and the horse who didn't give up. You tell it badly. They laugh anyway. A girl climbs into her grandmother's lap and whispers, "He sounds like one of us." You hear it. You hold it close. Later you sit alone outside your jur, staring at the stars. You hold the stitched token in your hand. The sky looks the same, but you're different. You belong now. Not because you've proven yourself, but because you stopped needing to. The sunrise today doesn't feel like a beginning, it feels like a continuation. The camp doesn't stir all at once the way it used to. It yawns into motion gradually, like a body that's finally healed enough to stretch without flinching. Fires are kindled slower. Horses are saddled without the usual urgency. Even the goats who have made it their personal mission to ruin your morning seem unusually respectful. One sniffs your boot, then decides to chew grass instead. You take it as a compliment. There's no spin of the wheel today. There hasn't been for a while. People have begun assigning you tasks based on trust rather than randomness. And today you're sent to the trading path, not as a customer, as a negotiator. You blink. A trader from another clan has arrived. He wears a fur coat dyed deep blue and carries 2 satchels lined with silver thread. His voice is smooth, his eyes darting, weighing the camp before he even unpacks. You're paired with 2 elders and a teenager with a sharper tongue than your best knife. You're the extra eyes, the runner, the quiet one who listens more than he speaks. The items for trade are simple wool, fermented mare's milk, 2 hand-woven rugs, and 1 cured hide. The trader offers salt-dried plums, a packet of green powder tea, and a bronze buckle shaped like a snarling wolf. Bartering begins. The teenager opens with a joke. The elder counters with history. You watch, absorb, then lean in and whisper about a small tear in the trader's cloth he hasn't mentioned. It changes the value. The elder uses that, the deal shifts, and then it's sealed with a gift, not a handshake. A folded cloth passed across the fire. A sign of goodwill. The trader leaves happy. So do the elders. Afterward, the teenager punches your arm. "You're good," she says. "Too quiet. Dangerous." You smile. A little. Mainstream fact for your pillow tonight: Mongol diplomacy was famously subtle. Gifts mattered more than contracts. Silence could speak louder than offers. Negotiators were often chosen not for volume, but for patience. Historians still argue whether this style originated from necessity or culture, but one thing's clear: it worked. You spend the rest of the morning helping sort the trade spoils. The tea is real. The plums are not. You eat one anyway, and regret it immediately. After lunch, you help the blacksmith, a quiet man with arms like tree trunks and a voice that could melt stone. He teaches you how to heat iron, how to fold it, how to listen for the ring that tells you it's strong. You make a hook. It's crooked. He hangs it anyway. "You'll make a better one," he says. Later. Your reward? A spoon, handmade. Yours now? He carves your name into the handle, well, your nickname anyway. It means noisy eyes. Apparently you watch everything. You pocket the spoon like it's a medal. And then a girl finds you. "It's ready," she says. You follow her. Behind a half-hidden rock formation near the edge of camp is a fire pit. Around it, 5 children and 2 elders sit cross-legged. There's food stew, fresh flatbread berries. They've invited you.
to family dinner. Not a formal feast, not a ritual, just a meal, shared. The children joke. One spills stew, another tries to braid your hair and fails spectacularly. You listen to one of the elders explain how he once lost an entire cart because a goat convinced him it would curse. No one questions the logic. Quirky tidbit in Mongol tradition family isn't just blood, it's proximity, shared hardship, and mutual loyalty. Names can change. Bonds can form quickly. You don't earn it through titles. You live into it. They call you by name now, not your old one, your new one. A little boy leans against your arm after dinner and whispers, "You should stay forever." You answer with a nod. Nothing more. That night you're asked to assist with the elder's fire and honor. You help build it carefully, laying the logs just so. You light it with a bundle of herbs tied earlier in the day. The smoke is sweet, thick with meaning. Everyone is quiet. No stories tonight. Just the fire. You sit beside it, letting its warmth fill the hollow spaces in your muscles and memory. Across the circle, the goat watches you again. She has stopped chewing. Her head is tilted. Finally, she blinks. Respect. Definitely respect. As the fire dims, you help scatter the embers in a spiral in old tradition. The ashes form a wheel. Tomorrow a new family may arrive, or an old one may leave. But tonight, the wheel stops. Not broken, just resting like you. You wake up before dawn, not because anyone calls you, not because a goat is standing on your chest, but because somehow you're just ready. The stars still hang in the sky, soft and indifferent. The air is cool and dry, and your breath drifts upward like a slow-moving ghost. There's movement outside already. You wrap your coat tight, step out, and follow it. It's not chores. Not today. It's departure. Not yours. One of the smaller families is breaking camp. Their livestock is loaded, their carts packed, their children unusually quiet. They're moving toward higher pastures just as the season demands. Not out of urgency, but because that's what the wheel of life here requires. You offer to help. No one tells you what to do. You simply move where needed, tightening a strap here, lifting a bundle there, carrying a sleepy toddler wrapped in wool from one gear to the waiting cart. The family's matriarch nods at you. Just once. It means more than a speech. The boy you helped during the butter churning incident hands you a carved bead. For your boot, he says. You accept it, not quite trusting yourself to speak. As the carts creak into motion, the entire camp watches not to say goodbye, but simply to mark the rhythm. The departure is as much a ceremony as any feast or fire. You stand with the others in silence until the family disappears behind the low hills, their goat trailing behind, looking characteristically smug. Then someone murmurs, "Now we make space," and you begin to shift tents. Not yours, not fully, but the camp moves to breathe again. Space where the family was is absorbed, stretched, rebalanced. You help carry poles, help roll felt, help tie knots you now know by instinct. There's no chore wheel in sight. You don't need it anymore. By mid-morning, the sun is high and you're summoned to the elder tent, inside a task, history keeping. A scribe hands you a sheet of birch bark. Another hands you ink. Your job? Record the names of those who left, their trades, the number of animals, the route they took, and interestingly, their mood. They left light, the elder says. Write it that way. So you do. Mainstream historians marvel at Mongol record-keeping during the empire's expansion couriers, code systems, multi-language documents. But here you learn the quieter version. Family logs,
seasonal maps, emotional notes, a written culture not just of facts, but feelings. Historians still argue whether this style served administrative function or moral guidance. The truth is likely both. You write slowly, respectfully. When you finish, the scribe takes your work, reads it, then adds one last line beneath it. It's your name. Not as author, as witness. Later you're asked to help at the weaving circle, something you haven't done before. You sit beside a woman unraveling old rope into thread. She works in silence, her fingers moving faster than your eyes can follow. She hands you a spindle, you spin. Clumsily, she smiles. Weaving, she explains, is how gurs are held together, how ropes are made, how saddles are fastened. Weaving isn't just craft, it's connection. A quirky detail: some Mongol songs are woven into textiles, not literally but symbolically. Patterns mimic melody. Knots represent rhythm. Stories are embedded in the structure. A blanket can hum if you know how to listen. You finish a single length of cord. It's wobbly, uneven, a bit proud of itself. She accepts it without correction. We all start like that, she says. You tuck the spindle into your coat. That afternoon, a horse arrives from another camp carrying newsletters and a sack of dried fruit that everyone agrees is unreasonably good. You help unload, help read, help deliver notes to jeers like a messenger with muddy boots and a grin too big for his face. One note is for you. It's written in shaky ink on thin leather. The goat tried to follow us. We turned her back. Good luck. It's unsigned. You laugh until you can't breathe. That night, a smaller fire is lit. You're asked to speak. You decline at first, but then you stand. And you tell a story not of heroism, not of battle, not even of storms. You tell the story of a goat, of a wheel, of a time you were new and the sky seemed too wide. Everyone laughs. Then they fall quiet and the fire crackles on. You sleep easily. When you dream, it's not of tasks undone or things lost. You dream of ropes tied tightly, of spinning wheels, and of your name carved gently into the night. You wake in the middle of the night, not from a noise, but from a feeling. Something shifts in the air, not danger, not discomfort, just movement, as if the wind has taken a breath. You sit up slowly, listening. Silence. Then a soft clatter, the sound of wood rolling. You step outside. The stars are bright again, blinking like old friends. The camp sleeps, most tents sealed up tight fires, reduced to faint glows. And there in the very center of the quiet lies the chore wheel, unattended, still spinning. You walk toward it barefoot. The grass is damp and cool under your soles. The wheel slows as you approach its last few clacks, echoing just a little too loud in the stillness. It stops, not on a task, not on an icon, but on a blank. No symbol, just silence. You sit beside it, unsure if it's a joke, a glitch, or something stranger. Then you realize this is the last task, the one without instructions. You look around the sleeping camp, the empty fire pits, the silent horses, the piled wood, the stacked dishes, the resting dogs. No one's waiting for you to do anything. So what do? You start small. You gather the leftover wool scraps near the weaver's jeer, blown about by wind earlier that day, and roll them neatly into bundles. You check a water bucket near the goat pen, tipping it upright where it had fallen. You retie a knot on one of the support ropes of the youngest family's tent. Nothing dramatic, just care. You sit near the goat, who is somehow always awake, and rub behind her ear. She doesn't lean in, but she doesn't walk away.
The blank on the wheel wasn't a mistake, it was permission. To do what needs doing not because it's assigned, but because you saw it. Mainstream historians might call this self-governance. Anthropologists might say it's communal responsibility. But here in the still dark morning with your feet wet and your hands scratched from rope and bramble, you call it something simpler, belonging. The next morning you sleep in. No one wakes you. When you emerge, the camp is alive again, normal, noisy, full of shouts and smoke and smells. But something's different. Not in the camp in you. You're not being directed anymore. You're moving with. A child hands you a bowl of hot milk and dried millet. No comment. Just routine. Just love disguised as food. Then you're called to the narrow hill on the camp's eastern side. It's time for blessing day. Every few moons, the camp climbs the hill at dawn to thank the land. Not for wealth, not for safety, just for continuing. You walk beside the rest, old, young, tired, bright-eyed. The climb is slow, ceremonial. No one talks, just footsteps. Wind. At the top, silence. The elder who taught you to tie saddle knots begins to sing. No words, just tone. Others hum, you join. It's not about harmony or pitch or performance. It's about vibration. Letting the steppe hear you, feel you, and remember you. Fringe detail steppe. Spirituality was less about gods and more about presence, the sky, the ground, the air. It was believed that sound, especially in groups, was the best way to touch the unseen. Historians still argue whether Mongol chanting evolved from shamanic rituals or early warning signals. But either way, it resonates. You sing, you feel it in your chest, and in the dirt beneath your bare feet. You return to camp walking lighter. Someone hands you a new tunic, stitched with a symbol on the collar. A circle, inside it a wheel. Not the chore wheel, your wheel, made from pieces of every task you've done, even the ones no one saw, especially those. Later, as the sky begins to darken, a traveler arrives. Tall, dusty, quiet, new. The goat eyes him with deep suspicion. You recognize the look on his face, nervous, curious, lost. And without being asked, you do the thing that once changed everything for you. You guide him to the wheel, let him spin. It clicks, stops. He looks confused. You smile. It's not about what it lands on, you say, but what you learn while doing it. He blinks, then nods. That night the fire is lit, not in the center, but beside the new tent. The flame dances, and so do you. Just a little, just enough. You eat, you laugh, you pass your spoon, the one with your name, your witness. And then, as the stars take their places once more, the goat curls up beside you for the very first time. You whisper, "It's about time." She doesn't respond, but she doesn't leave, which here is love. The morning comes softly, no alarms, no horn, just the breath of the wind combing gently through the grass, and the rhythmic creak of ropes swaying against tent poles. You lie still for a moment, feeling the earth's quiet heartbeat beneath you, your fingers curled around the hem of the blanket that smells faintly of smoke, wool, and time. You've forgotten what day it is, not because you're confused, but because it doesn't matter anymore. You step outside, and the light is golden warm, without heat, as if the sun knows not to rush you. You stretch bones cracking like twigs, muscles yawning into movement, and you realize something subtle and profound. You are not tired, not the kind of tired that lives in your shoulders or your stomach or your chest. The old tired, the kind of weight that once followed you like a second shadow, is gone. Someone waves. A child runs past with 2 pieces of bread in hand. The goat trots behind, hoping to bargain. A woman adjusts her saddle straps and calls to her sister. It's all the same, but somehow different. Or maybe you are. No one tells you what to do. You do things anyway. You refill water without being asked. Tie knots before they loosen. Brush a horse you don't ride just because he looks like he needed the company. You sharpen knives. Stir soup. Sit beside someone who doesn't speak, but clearly needs a listener. You find your name on a new list, not on the wheel, not on a roster, but in a hand-carved plaque above the door to the common storage tent. It simply reads, Caretaker. The title is small, but it's yours. And tonight, there's a feast. Not a grand one, no banners, no declarations, just extra food, more tea, a longer song. The laughter lasts well past dark. Someone tells the story of the traveler who showed up with 2 big boots and 2 small plans, who tried to milk the wrong goat, who caught a lamb and got sneezed on, who spilled porridge, spun the wheel like a game show, and once wore his blanket backward for an entire day. You laugh along. You recognize the character. You don't mind being him, because now the story ends differently. That same traveler becomes part of the camp, the kind of person others turn to. Trust. Sit beside when the fire crackles low. He learns the wheel doesn't assign purpose, it reveals it. He learns that the point was never completing the chores. It was becoming the kind of person who would do them even if no one asked. And so, as the final song drifts into a hum and the fire sighs into ash, you sit quietly with the goat by your side and the stars above like soft pinpricks in velvet. And slowly, carefully, the world slows with you. The stars are dim now, faded into the pre-dawn hush. The fire has crumbled into a soft, glowing nest of embers. The sounds of the camp have faded, no laughter, no clinking spoons, no rustling tent flaps. Just stillness, just breath. You lie back on your sleeping mat, the wool beneath you warmed by the day's work. Your muscles sore, in the best way begin to loosen. The air smells faintly of milk, tea, and wood smoke, with a trace of sage still clinging to your tunic. Somewhere in the distance, a lone flute plays not loudly, not for an audience. Just a few notes, then silence. A reminder that the camp keeps breathing even as you let go. Your thoughts begin to drift soft and loose, like grass in the wind. You remember the feel of the rope in your hands, the sharp sting of cold water on your skin, the way the goat once head-butted your knee with unnecessary flair. You remember laughter, warm bowls, stars reflected in puddles, and through it all the turning of the wheel. It doesn't spin anymore, not for you. You've become part of it. A steady spoke, a familiar rhythm. The chores are done. The camp is at rest. And so are you. Let the weight slide off your chest. Let the tension melt from your jaw. Let the rhythm of this world wrap around you like a second skin. Breathe in. Breathe out. You're home now. And tomorrow, if the wheel turns again, you'll be ready. But for now, close your eyes. Let the silence hold you. Let the steppe carry you. And sleep.